Well, hello there. It's Jaymz Bee. This is my podcast. Every Friday you can see somebody new, somebody fascinating is going to drop by. We'll talk. I'll ask them questions. You'll find out something, and that'll be that. But wait, no, there's also listings. You'll get listings in about 3 seconds from now. After a couple of quick thank yous, I want to thank everyone at Patreon who has been donating to this podcast. I'm inviting you to some great parties. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you didn't donate. 5, 10, 20 bucks a month. Some people do more. Whatever you can do, patreon.com is where to go. And I also want to thank Barbarian Steakhouse for their sponsorship. Great food, great ambiance. Go there for the main course, but stick around for the dessert. And also barberfinancial.com. If you have any financial needs, large or small, call Captain Paul. I just wrote that. Okay, let's get over to some listings right away. At Lula Lounge, tonight, Diego Ramos is performing. It's Havana Club Friday, as always, and Salsa Saturday. They do this all the time. Sunday, Adam James is back in town from LA. He's singing with the Jazz FM 91 Youth Big Band. Avery Raquel is going to be doing duets with him again, and it's wonderful to see young kids so inspired. Adam James is famous around the world. He is one hell of a showman. If you like Sinatra, you're going to love Adam James. If you like Bobby Darin, Dean Martin, anybody who croons and has a little extra oomph, well, that's Adam James. So you can get tickets right now at jazz.fm, and that's Sunday evening. It's an early show. And check out all the stuff that happens at lula.ca. Over at Jazz Bistro, they have a cabaret series that's on right now. And here's just a few. John Alcorn is on stage tonight. And this time next week, Thompson Highway and Patricia Cano. Patricia has a sweet voice. Thompson is a wild man, so talented. I remember seeing his play Dry Lips Ought to Move to Kapuskasing many years ago, 20, 30 years ago, and it was a fantastic play. I remember interviewing him, and he is more excitable than me or anyone I've ever met. He's crazy excitable, and a great piano player, too. So that looks really cool. But also, in between John Alcorn and Thompson Highway is Addie Braun, Judith Lander, Ori Dagan, a whole bunch of people who love show tunes, who love to do tributes to various singers. I think Addie Braun's doing Doris Day. So lots of cool stuff. jazzbistro.ca. Hughes Room Live, Andrea Koziol. She is a really entertaining singer, a magnetic personality on stage. And she's with pianist Bill Brennan. They have a CD launch on Saturday at Hughes Room Live. And let's see, other cool things. Oh, Elizabeth Shepard and Michael Acapinti are performing coming up with Mark Nelson on drums, Remy Jean Leblanc avec la contrebasse, and Elizabeth Shepard. She's the coolest. She's living in the Montreal area. We don't get to see her much. And the thought of her and Acapinti on the same stage, that's going to be a lot of excitement if you're fans of that John Lennon tribute album that Michael Acapinti made with his group Shine On. Elizabeth Shepard's featured on that, and I love to play that record. So all that's happening. Elizabeth Shepard, of course, she played the Hollywood Bowl, opening for Jamie Cullum. She's headlined in the UK. She's getting world famous, and for good reason. And speaking of her, she's going to be joining Heather Bambrick at Old Mill coming up soon, too. Heather Bambrick hosts the next 2 Friday and Saturdays at the Home Smith Bar at the Old Mill Inn. Tonight, Elizabeth Shepard is going to be there with Heather Bambrick. Tomorrow night, the 22nd, it's Barbara Lika. And then next Friday, does this make sense? Yeah, Rennie Lee. She's in from Montreal. Amazing. Well, that's probably sold out. Look, I should tell you, Home Smith Bar usually has no reservations, except during the Toronto Jazz Festival. So and Broadsway are the last one a week from Saturday. And that's Heather Bambrick, Julie Michaels, Diane Lee, really cool trio. So all of these shows might be sold out. Go to oldmilltoronto.com, click on entertainment, and find out if there are tickets left. A few special listings, Kahil Elzabar and David Murray. This is my last chance to tell you about this. It's happening on tonight. Ooh, it's happening tonight, June 21st. If there are tickets left, CalibanArtsTheater.com is where you'll get them. I will be there. You should be there too. If you know any musicians who are into far out music that has a spiritual bent, they need to be there. I'm talking to you, George Kohler. It's going to be a great show. Colin Hunter and the Starlight Orchestra are back at Palais Royale. They did my birthday party there last April and packed the joint. They're back again. And again, the money from the door is going to Jazz FM 91. Colin Hunter is such a great guy. And last time he had 350 people on the dance floor for 4 hours. So I think that's going to be a big party. Combo Royale are opening. They're regulars over at the Swing Toronto scene at Dover Courthouse, and they pack the dance floor as well. So bring your dancing shoes, bring your camera, and the patio will be open. So this is going to be a mega party. Tickets are just $20 for students, $40 for everybody else, and information at jazz.fm. Richard Flohill, June 28th. He's got to turn 85 years old. He's doing a benefit concert for Unison Benevolent Fund, and he's going to have a lot of performers, some burlesque, some folk, some jazz, every kind of music for Richard Flohill, because he likes every kind of music. That'll be a great show. HorseshoeTavern.com for that, and TorontoJazz.com. Just so you know, the TD Toronto Jazz Festival is on. Emily Claire Barlow, Cecile McLaurin-Salvin, some people that have more than 3 names and less than 3 names. Lots of great people, but just surf and see what's left, what tickets are left. That's TorontoJazz.com. Don't go to JazzToronto.com. I don't know where that's going to lead you. TorontoJazz.com. Okay, and speaking of festivals, the Beaches Jazz Festival. It's coming up on July 5th to the 28th, and Bill King is my guest. He's going to tell us all about the Beaches Jazz Festival, but he's also going to talk about his own career, a fascinating long career. He's done a lot for jazz in this city and in this country. So let's go talk to Bill King right now. Bill King, hello.
Hello, James.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing fine, man.
So I am wondering, you were born in 1946 in Jefferson, Indiana, and that was the same year Mensa was founded.
I often
Coincidence?
think about that. I often think about that, James. And it was Jeffersonville, Indiana.
Jeffersonville, Indiana.
Yes.
UNICEF, UNESCO, Mensa, they were all founded in the year you were born.
Yes.
And the Casio Company was formed.
Okay.
I don't know if that's too
I'm just
important.
learning a lot here. But none of it was founded in my home area.
No. So what was it like in Indiana growing up?
I grew up 2 blocks from the Ohio River. So our lives was based around the river. And so it was kind of interesting because you would have the Belle of Louisville, these old riverboats, right? And then the Cincinnati Belle. And they would go up and down, and then barges, right? And so, as a kid, I would sit out just in a small little front area out front of our house, and I'd listen to the calliope being played. And that was just a trip, because it's all out of tune, but it would play every day as, the hot summers drifted by. Right?
And some Scott Joplin or songs like that?
Yeah, whatever they're playing. Yeah. It's hard to define what it was then, but it was... And then you would smell Jack Daniels, because the mash over there was getting grind and whatever else, and the brute. So you had Jack Daniels, that smell. You had Wonder Bread coming across the river, right? So you get these mix of smells, and then the Ohio River was just like, it rolls all the way down to the Mississippi. So it's this like force of nature that's all mud and driftwood. So you kind of have this as a backdrop to your life.
Wow. Yeah. And what kind of music other than calliope affected you when you were young?
I think just... in our area, it was jazz, because I studied classical. I went to the Academy of Music, and then eventually short time at Conservatory at Louisville. Mm-hmm. But basically, it was it was early rock and roll because Elvis was such an impact, right? So you figure by 1954, I'm like 8 years old or whatever, and Love Me Tender shows up, and the film shows up playing in the town next to us. So the family has to go see Love Me Tender. So Elvis was a big item.
Right.
So as you got to figure,
This is like 5 years before the big Brubeck and Miles Davis and all the other stuff. All the big famous records hit in 59,
yeah,
right?
Just prior to that, I think one of the first things I heard jazz thing was Red Hot and Cool, which was Brubeck about 56 or 55. So we had an idea, but it wasn't when it turned to Time Out and all those things.
Yeah.
But the backdrop was sort of a mix of pop and of course, big on country music in the area, right?
Right.
So you had Porter Wagner, you had all those kind of stars, and then we had across the river we had the Randy Atcher show, which was for kids, and they're all in cowboy garb, right? And then you had the Pee Wee King show. So Tennessee Waltz, he wrote Tennessee Waltz with Red Stewart, right? Or Red Stewart. And so you had that.
Everybody's name was Red back then. There was a lot of jazz guys with colorful names.
Just have Red here, that's all. But I think, was it Rex or probably Rex Stewart or Red Stewart, probably.
What about 1963? Now, that's the year I'm born, but you're already going to the Oscar Peterson's Advanced School of Contemporary Music.
Yeah.
You spent a year doing that?
Summer.
A summer course.
6 weeks.
Yeah.
It was one. You know what it was? In '62, we began to get an idea what jazz was about, right? So the first concert my dad took us to was Modern Jazz Quartet.
Wow! So lucky you.
Yeah, but we didn't understand it, right? We're like, I guess I'm in 11th grade or something like that.
Yeah.
10th grade of school, so I'm about 15, right? We didn't quite get it, right? Because it wasn't exciting as the Brubeck and the stuff going on, but it was just, it was just on the cusp of, you had the jazz, but it was also on the cusp of the Beatles and this whole British invasion. And it was in that lull period where it was all beach blanket bingo, right? So it was all Frankie Avalon and that Funicello. Yeah. There was a lot of that going on and all that stuff. And then just bam, the jazz thing got hot. And we had Downbeat magazine. Because whoever the music people I was around at the time had Downbeat, and out in the waiting room would be Downbeat. And I started reading them, and I read about all these people, and I see what the cover stories are. And then I saw Oscar Peterson in there, and I had to know, you didn't have no internet.
Right.
So you had to go to friends, or you had to go to some place where you could listen to it. Then you could go to like a record store and take the vinyl and go into another room and listen to it.
You were allowed to listen before you bought it, yeah?
Yeah, so it wasn't buying it, right. But we would go in and put them on and listen to it, right?
Yep. And the year later, Berklee School of Music, not Berklee College, Berklee School of Music.
Yeah, and it just was, after the Oscar thing, we did the summer in Toronto, 1963. And that was a pivotal moment in my life because it was Ray Brown, it was Phil Nemens, Ed Thigpen. These were my teachers. And I was in, I think...
Phil Nemens, 93 and still going.
93 and still going.
Unbelievable guy.
But, then he was just a terrific guy because he was one of the guys who would come in and take his time with you. Oscar would take his time with you. Ray Brown would take his time with you. Oscar was rarely around, but Ray Brown was there every day. They were like really conscientious of being teachers in this 6-week summer thing. And that music got passed around. You got turned on.
So you got a scholarship to go there for 6 weeks.
Yeah, I got a half scholarship paid, right?
That's beautiful.
And so what we did it through the church, through our church. And we found a place that's me. It's gotta be, James, you know this stuff.
Checking my phone too. Oh, look, it's 11:11. Your dinger went off to prove it's 11:11.
But anyway, there was a family, we connected through the church, and I stayed with a family up here on Curry Avenue. And for 6 weeks. And then I had money I'd saved from playing these like $10 gigs in big bands. So I had money to go to school and then money to barely survive on and eat. So for 6 weeks I just ran around Yorkville and in the scene. But there was only 2 of us that young. So I was 15 I was 16 and the other kid was 17 or it might be, I was 17, 16. We just hung out. Yeah. Guy from Minnesota, drummer. So everybody else was in their 30s. They were all pro musicians. Yeah. And they beat the snot out of us. They right. just abused the daylights out of the kids, right? We were so clueless, right?
Now, you mean musically, they weren't hazing you, right?
No, it's just, we would have an opinion, and they would shoot us down.
Exactly.
And it just straightened you out.
Tell you what's what.
Yeah, Dave Brubeck sucks. Young man, you have done nothing in your life.
Tell me about 1966, The Shadows. You played with them for a while.
Yeah, this is a band that had a record out on Motown, or Smash Records. We covered a Motown song, Shake Sherry, that was on Smash Records, which was the subsidiary of Monument Records out of Nashville. Yeah. And it became a semi-hit. And then followed up with Monin. And we had to change our name then because of Cliff Richards and the Shadows.
In England.
In England.
Right.
We ran into, because they were getting on the Billboard charts, these 45s.
Both
right?
Shadows started around the same time.
But he was selling millions of records, so he had to influence. So we just changed it to Chateaus. We didn't even know what Chateau was.
French house. Well, there you go.
I know.
That's hilarious.
From
Shadows to Chateau.
It just sounded so good.
Yeah.
So we did a recording of a cover of Monin, which Ray Charles did, and I did an arrangement for it. And then I wrote something on the B side, was sort of like a takeoff on Watermelon Man. Mm-hmm. 7 Come 11, and it went top 50.
Amazing.
Billboard, you know.
Was that what got you into the Dick Clark Caravan of Stars?
Same people.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, because that band with the Chateaus, my brother was in it, we could learn records really quick. So the New Beats came to town, Ronnie Dove, Mel Carter, Hold Me, Thrill Me, Kiss Me. Mm-hmm. Artists like that would come to our area, or Paul, what's his name, that had Palisade Park. Remember that? Mm-hmm. So these are all one-off, would come to our area, and I would just transcribe the music. Either I'd write the horn parts out or for them, or we just sit down.
Right, because a lot of pop bands weren't traveling with charts and musical directors or anything like that. No,
so they'd pick a local band that had that could learn all the music, right? And you back them up.
So that worked handy for you, because then you went into being musical director for Linda Ronstadt and Janis Joplin. Now, those were short stints, but what did you learn from them?
Yeah, the Ronstadt...
They must have been very different.
Yeah, the Ronstadt was great because I was playing in a piano bar in Greenwich Village. And it just so happened that her management, Herb Cohn, who also managed Zappa, and partners his came into the place where I was playing in the front window. And they heard me playing piano, and they went, "Hey, you sound like..." We needed somebody to play piano for Linda Ronstadt. And I went, "You guys joking with me?" And they go, no, we really do. You have a music director?" And I said, "Yeah." And they said, "Okay, play some more." So I played some more, and I was playing like Eleanor Rigby and all these Beatle tunes. And
yeah. So this is 1968.
Yeah, 68. Yeah. And so I sat there playing, and they go, "Okay, we'll hook you up with Lee Underwood. He's our guitar player. Very well guitar player, a well-known guitar player." We got together and just hit it off like gangbusters. And so they put us all in a car and sent us to Los Angeles.
Wow.
And
how did you meet Janis Joplin?
Another thing like that, where I'm in the Greenwich Village, and when you were in the village, all the musicians that you knew, rumor would get around.
Right, who's good, right.
Who was looking for somebody.
Yeah.
So I just happened, and this is great, because I was at the Bitter Inn, and I just happened to be hanging out in the front in the middle of the afternoon, and David Clayton Thomas shows up. And then Sly Stone shows up. And somehow I got sucked in this vortex where we all go into the Bitter Inn, and everybody decides they want to jam. So Clayton was there, and there was some other players, that were associated with him. I think this is before Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And Sly just started playing piano, and there was an organ or something. I started playing some organ, and then we switched, and then Clayton was going on. And then it's just, at a casual conversation, somebody just says, "Oh, Janis Joplin's looking for a music director and keyboard player." And I went, "Oh, I just heard that." So I went down to the record store on 8th Avenue, found out who her management was, and called them.
Wow, good for you.
And I got an audition, and I brought over a 45 I had recorded with candidates that showed my piano playing and stuff. Mm-hmm. And they liked it, took me in a recording studio with this trio of guys I was working with, and with Herb Abramson, who was the founder of Atlantic. It was his studio, which I'd been doing stuff for. And they auditioned us with Albert Grossman and all those, came in, and they went, "We love it, we'll send it to Janis." And she said, "I like the guys playing," and that's how I got it.
And how many gigs?
Oh, we only did a couple things.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I got in trouble because of the draft and stuff.
Oh, yes. No, that's the timing. It was right after that, right? So you
that
came up to Toronto in 69, 70?
Came up late 69, but the draft killed off the gig with Linda Ronstadt. And I'll tell you why very quickly was, I was just starting to work with her. We were rehearsing, getting together. There was a gig coming up, and our FBI shows up at the Musicians Union, and I knew the guy there that sort of looked after all the pop acts, and he contacted me. He told me they came in, they had photos of me, photos of about 5 other guys they were looking for, and they knew that you were doing stuff with Lyndon Ronstadt. So they had went to Capitol Records and issued a statement to her that if she'd be caught in my presence, she could be arrested. So that ended that gig.
Whoa.
So the Janis gig, it was one of those things that, you know, they were getting closer and closer, so they got to my parents' house when I was playing with Janis, and they got there. They had been talking to my parents, the FBI, right up until I went with Janis to Memphis to play a big Stax review and stuff. And they had been there talking to my dad, and I kind of made a decision that night because Janis was getting screwed up on heroin and stuff, right? Not my world, right? And I'd been in that for about 5 weeks or so, and got along great and everything, but I had a hard time adjusting to this junkie sort of vibe going on, right? And so he just sort of said, look, I worked it out with the FBI. You won't go to prison, but you will go into the Army. So I decided to go home, and I went in the Army instead.
Yeah.
And just processed into the Army and stuff. And freaked everybody out with Albert Grossman, and they just couldn't believe this happened.
Right.
And then they said, you know, if you'd only told us, we could have got you out of this. And I went, well, that was what I was dealing with, you know.
Yeah, well, between, right, the junkiness and not knowing what's going to happen, yeah.
I was too young to deal with that world, right? I wasn't prepared to deal with the needle world, you know.
Right.
You know?
And the Army, you didn't end up going, though, right? You came to Canada
No, I
instead?
ended up in the Army.
You did? For how long?
10 months.
Oof.
Yeah. I was at Fort Knox, did basic training, then Fort Campbell, Kentucky, where Jimi Hendrix was prior.
Wow.
So we heard all his stories.
So it was all training, though, then?
Yeah.
So when you came up to Canada, for some reason I thought you came up because you opposed the war. That's why you came up.
Yeah, I did, but I totally, but I tried to deal with it from inside the military.
Right.
Which didn't work out.
Right.
So that's kind of when we parted, because I got orders from Vietnam.
Yeah.
And Christine and I tried to deal with, you know, everything from the chaplain to the adjutant general to all the process of going conscientious objectors, so they wouldn't let me have the status.
Right. Your wife, you mentioned Chris. My God, how long have you two known each other?
50 years.
50 years.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Behind every great woman, there's a dude. No.
I tried to tell her that. You know.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Any secret to your success?
I think it comes from coming from nothing and being two young people who had nothing, right? And you start out with nothing and you build from nothing, and you build it off of just, you love being with each other.
Absolutely.
And the joy of being with each other.
Oh my God.
Hi!
Good guy.
Hey Bill, how are you?
Good to see you, boss.
Good to see you too.
This is where we'll edit.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
All right. You guys got a great place here, man. This is a great house.
Hi. Crazy here.
Kensington Sound.
No problem. 1969.
Yeah.
You're in Toronto and you record Dixie Peach and Goodbye Super Dad.
Yeah, that was, Goodbye Super Dad was 72 or 3.
Yeah.
And even Danny Marks was going to be on that album.
Yeah.
Initially. And then the next year we did Dixie Peach. And that was with just Whitey Gland and all these people.
So those were for Capitol.
Yeah.
Then you're suddenly working with Martha Reeves and the Pointer Sisters.
Yeah.
And then Ronnie Hawkins, right? I mean, these gigs just pop up, right? And you just grab on and say yes? Because these are very diverse people from the Pointer Sisters.
All of them are, like the Martha Reeves thing just came out of nowhere. Because this is 1976, right? And it was Neil Dixon and them.
Yeah.
Right? And they were managing Martha at the time, and she had just recorded an album.
Was that Gold Records? Was that his company?
Which was Richard Perry. She was rich with MCA in the States.
MCA, okay.
But they were managing her.
Mm-hmm.
So she did Wild Nights, that album. It's a really good record.
Cool.
She was breaking from the Vandellas and all that stuff. And she went on her own. It was her solo, but they spent a fortune on this album. Richard Perry did. He cost the company a fortune, right? And she thought it was going to be a massive hit, right? And so I did. I stayed with her. We went to we played in the States, California, bunch of gigs and stuff. Then we went to Europe, and we went to Germany and Spain and played.
Cool.
And it was just absolute insanity.
Do you have a most memorable of all of these people? Do you have it sounds like Martha might have been the most memorable, but what, like with Ronnie and all these different people, is there something that stands out as the kind of the pinnacle for you?
Each one of them come with something. You know, Martha was a great singer. You know, later in life the voice quivers and everything, but at that time, the greatest memory is just being on stage, and she was just she was wacky as could be, right? And paranoid, and all these other. She went through the Motown thing, right? The whole
highs and lows,
right? The whole disappointment and everything. But when I heard her sing "You Lost That Love and Feeling" on stage, and then I would hear her sing "Heat Wave," and then "Wild Nights" and all these things, I would go, "That is a great voice." That's when you put it. It stays in your mind. That is a great voice. And you're on the stage with somebody who is just a magnificent singer.
Mm-hmm.
And then with the Pointer Sisters, it was just working with Chester Thompson, who went on to be with Genesis and Phil Collins. Working with a drummer like that, playing with Zappa, Weather Report, and buddying around and jamming and doing stuff, it just puts you on another level.
Right.
And it's a trio, right? So we traveled as a trio and then added band and everything. Working with them and then working the Carol Burnett show in Las Vegas. Being there for a month with her and working with Peter Matz and just being around, you know.
So Carol Burnett was super famous at that time.
Are you kidding?
She had her TV show and was doing a Vegas show, yeah.
It's the whole TV show. So
you had Harvey Korman on stage in Vegas?
Korman,
wow!
And Vicki Lawrence.
Lyle Wagner.
They're all there.
Pre-Tim...
no, he's there too.
Oh, he was there
Tim
too? Tim Conway? Oh, man.
Well, I always tell people this great story because we had rehearsals prior to Vegas and they were CBS studio. And I had to go to the rehearsals and we had the great choreographer, I forget her name, choreographing the Pointer Sisters. So the Pointer Sisters are part of this show. And they got like 15 minutes a night in the show, right, to come out and sing and dance and do their thing. And a bit of a little comedy with Carol. We go to CBS Studios, and I got Jessie with me. And Jessie's 4 years old. And Chris is gone. She's in Arizona. So I have to take care of him at the same time. So we go to the studios.
Four-year-old son in Las Vegas.
No, we're in
LA. In LA, in the
Hollywood.
studios doing the rehearsals.
CBS.
Right.
So we go there. I got him with me, and I go down to the front desk, and the girl tells me I can't go upstairs because I can't take the kid. And I said, I got to do the rehearsal. So she calls upstairs, and Joe Hamilton comes down, who's the producer and also Carol Burnett's wife, a husband.
Mm-hmm.
And he comes down, he looks at Jessie, and he goes, "What the fuck are you doing, woman?" He goes, "It's a kid, it's a baby.
Mm-hmm.
Come on upstairs." So I go, "Great, I love you, guy." So we go upstairs, and he goes, "Just go down the end of the hall." So he takes a turn, and I could see down in the hall was this whole set with Carol Burnett and all them, rehearsal room. I go past the first window, and I peek in, and it's Carol O'Connor, and it's Meathead, it's Rob Reiner, it's the whole cast of All in the Family, standing, reading their scripts, reading their lines. And I hold Jessie up and I go, "You probably won't remember this, but that is history." We go to the next window, and it's Red Fox.
The dirtiest man in Vegas.
It's Red Fox and Lamont. It's Sanford and Son rehearsing their parts, right? And I'm going, this is freaking amazing. I'm just like stunned. So we get down the hall. So there's Carol Burnett, there's Harvey Korman. They're all sitting around, and there's a couch like this sitting there, and she's sitting there. I walk in, she sees Jessie, she goes, "Oh my God." That's the most beautiful baby I ever seen. She comes and takes him away from me, and she don't give him back. So the whole rehearsal, she walks around doing comedy, singing, carrying Jessica, right? And I'm over playing piano, doing all the bits and everything. But to me, that's the standout. Just being part of that piece of history at that time, you know.
Yeah, man. All the family in Sanford and Son.
Yeah.
Now, in the mid-'80s, apparently you had a show on CIUT already in the mid-'80s?
Prior to that, Q107.
Right. The CIUT just surprised me because you're there again. So.
Yeah, well, I brought it on the air. When I did Q107 for a year and a half and do Sunday mornings, Q Jazz, and then I just walked away from that because there was a lot of pressure not to play jazz. I said, I can't do this. So, great guy at CIUT invited me to come over there and do 3 hours on Thursday.
Yeah.
But we weren't, it was only on campus at the time. But he said in 4 or 5 months, we're going to have, our license will be out there and so people hear you. So we stuck it out. So what was so wonderful about that time, there was only one jazz thing basically, it was Ted O'Reilly, CJRT, who had everything. So, and there was stuff I think at CKLN too, but nobody had thought about making prime afternoon jazz spots. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I had Thursday, Barry Livingston had a day, Curtis Bailey on Saturday, Memo Acevedo, Latin on Sunday nights. Wonderful young lady on Tuesday. Every day, Doug, I forget Doug's last name, Doug had a jazz
Doug
show.
Watson?
Doug Watson had a show on Mondays, right?
Yeah.
So from, I think 1 to 4, people got all this variety of jazz in the city. So we could play the up-and-coming young Mike Murleys and the Unity stuff and all this new stuff. And then on Friday it was all the avant-garde stuff. Did that for a year and a half, and then a guy came to me and he goes, you know, I can get you a national network. You know, and so he arranged a thing with Carlene O'Keefe for the Jazz Report Radio Network. So he pulled in 26 cities.
Wow. And then that turned into the Jazz Report magazine.
Yes,
in a way.
It did.
All right.
The Jazz Report, all of it started from a playlist at Sam's. A guy named Fernando was working up in the records section when I started doing the Jazz Report, and people would call in and say, what did you just play? And I'd say, okay. So I thought about it, and I made up a top 25, and they used to post it at Sam's.
Right.
And people bought records from it.
Right.
And then I'm sitting with my buddy one night, and I says, why don't we start like a 8-page kind of flyer thing?
Right.
And we mapped it all out, the magazine, and then we started it. And then within a year,
How many years was that magazine?
19.
Wow.
Yeah.
19 years of a magazine and your Jazz Report Awards, which turned into the National Jazz Awards.
That started 93, 94.
Yeah.
And then it stayed for 7 years. And then I think about 2000 or stuff, everybody came back and said, will you do another awards thing? We'll support you. And
Yeah.
we had the Junos and Factor and everybody wanted to support us to start that awards.
Yeah.
It's the National Jazz Awards.
Yeah. And then 1988, the beginning of the Beaches Jazz Festival. That must have been an insanely busy. I mean, right now you're insanely busy too.
More busy now.
Seems to never end, right? But 1988, you were the first year and from the very beginning, artistic director of the festival.
Yeah, what it was, there was a guy there. It's a peculiar thing happened. When I had the Jazz Report Radio Network, Amstel Beer was connected to the same guy, Vickers and Benson, is the ad agency. Amstel wanted to put on a festival, jazz festival in Toronto. And so through this same guy that put, Bruce Davidson, who built the network for me, he sent me out, he goes, go find a location in Toronto, a place that you think we could have a festival. And Amstel will do it, do the thing. So I got on my bike and I'm riding through the city and I happen to get to the beaches and I pull up into Kew Gardens. And there's an old rickety platform in the middle of it and there's, what's her name, Galway.
Yeah.
You know, playing bass. Not
Rosemary Galway.
with her women, jazz group,
Yeah.
right? I think maybe Jane Fair or something like that. And they're playing and I stopped off and I went, this place is fantastic. So I called Bruce and I said, we took a drive out there and he goes, this place is fantastic. So we went back to Amstel. We said, we found a place. We showed Amstel the place. Then Amstel says, well, this all is keyed on getting our beer into local pubs in the area. So they started going around with the salesmen, and they ended up Lido's in the beach.
Uh-huh.
And they wanted to get it on draft, right? And Lido figured out what they were doing, and he went and got the license to the park and decided to start a jazz festival with another guy. So they started putting it together, and the first thing it did, they called me because I'd been selling ads to Lido for his place at the beach. And they said, do you want to get involved? And you want to MC? And I said, gladly. And they said, could you help us with some of the bookings? So I said, sure. So I did that for like 2 years with this other guy who was acting as the music director, and he just quit. And then I just stayed in that position, then sort of took on that. And then I brought in Martine in DDB because she was working as the PR person for the Club Blue Note.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought she was an incredible person. And that she's one of the top people at DDB now.
So you have the guy from the neighborhood
Yeah.
who's doing the quick moves. You got the girl who knows how to promote, and the guy who knows how to book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it rolled through all these years through city council wars, the trashing and the bashing of the Tom Jacobecks and the Sandra Buzzins, all through council to the 31st year.
Yeah. And now, in the last few years, because of Woodbine Park, it's big and it's almost a month long.
Not by my choice.
Right.
That's Lido's thing.
Mm-hmm.
He just saw an opportunity to do things over time, and I think he was looking at that way of attracting advertising stuff because it's still run on a shoestring and it's still a community event.
Yeah.
And it's always stretched for dollars, you know.
Right. Well, the street festival, those people, you get everyone from Samba Squad to Dr. Draw, like some high-level playing, but they're so close together, and there's so much going on. How do you know where to put people when you're organizing that street?
You know, you have to do it with a store that's open.
Right.
And somebody will work for you. Because it's a partnership, right?
Yeah.
The Beaches either pays all of it or they pay half and the store pays half for the musicians, right? So it's that kind of thing and what is available on the street. But it's also the kind of thing that we try to tell the bands to be courteous to the other band this next year. A lot of them aren't.
Yeah.
But the idea is that it's moving sound, that as you move, you sort of get into the zone where there's cross
Yeah,
the
there's the middle part
Yeah.
between the two bands. You can hear a bit of both, but then you stand in front of the band.
It's kind of like mass insanity, but it's kind of a sweet spot, right? Because it's just this mesh of music.
Yep.
All kinds of stuff.
Absolutely. And then the park is so big that nothing bleeds. When you have different stages at the park, you really have a separation of sound.
I'm still a Kew Gardens guy.
Yeah. The old days, right?
I'm still I love the intimacy of that.
Yeah.
There was something about it that, I still remember every year that Jeff Chapman would come from the Toronto Star and sit on side stage with his paper and his pen and his cigar
Yeah.
and write a review about the festival.
Yep.
There's things like that I miss, right, of that type things, or sitting there with Ernie Andrews, the great Ernie Andrews, the singer, and taking him to look for chicken,
Right.
Just the funny things you did, right? or my a great buddy, a friend of mine, he passed away the year after the festival. It was his 50th birthday, and the fabulous Thunderbirds were playing.
Mm-hmm.
That was his band forever, right?
Yeah.
Jimmy Vaughn, and that was his band. And we just got up, and he's out in the middle of the park, and it's so jammed. And I said, "This is my buddy Max Korn, comic." I said, "This is his birthday today. He turns 50. Let's all sing happy birthday for Max." Mm-hmm. So we got the Thunderbirds, we got the whole park, and he's like standing in the middle going, "What just happened to me?"
I love it. I love it. So the festival's coming up, July 5th, for most of the month. And you have now 3 radio shows.
Yeah.
So CIUT,
Yeah.
You're on with Ted Wallachin on CFRB,
Yeah.
and of course with your son on Jazz FM, and that's been going on now for a few months. How are you enjoying the different types of shows?
I love doing it like that. You know, because the one at CIAT, I could never give it up because I get to talk to people. You love doing the same thing.
Absolutely.
I get to sit down for an hour, and it's just so many music people, cultural people, arts and music. They come in, we just have a chat, conversation. It's the greatest connection to community, right? Ted, this is our 9th year together, and it's his show. And I get to play piano, I get to bullshit, talk here with him, you know, egg him on here. The great part of that is just, over the years, the guests that come through. John Torrey's a big fan. He comes by, hangs out with you.
For those not in Toronto, that's the mayor of Toronto.
That's the mayor. or you remember back when with Arturo Sandoval was on the show, and he pulls up in a cab playing trumpet. He played trumpet all the way over in the cab, and he pulls up in front of the station, gets on the street, playing trumpet, walks straight into the buildings, into the Chung buildings,
Still playing trumpet,
and he's still playing. Goes right on the airplane. I mean, you have moments like that, or the great country singer Iris DeMent, me and Roberto Gambarini playing "Always on My Mind," playing country, doing a little.
Wow.
So I mean, we've had these moments with these incredible guests.
Yeah.
And then Soul Nation is just, with me and Jesse, we both are big fans of soul and funk, and all this hip hop and acid jazz and new music, and that is just. That has fallen in place basically because we sort of, as father and son, have supported each other. We do one band together, Rhythm Express, do reggae stuff together, but we have separate careers.
Right.
But we've been cheerleaders for each other. I know he's a voracious reader. There isn't nothing he doesn't know about any band or anything. Music history. The first time we sat down and did a radio show together, and he started going on, and he goes, "But this was so," and then I looked across the table and went, "You're my son?"
Right, and you've got no notes in front of you. This is off the top of your head.
I said, "You know all of that stuff?" And we sat there, and then somebody called in, and he goes, "They sound like the same people talking to each other. You guys have voices that are so similar, but the rapport you have together, who are you?" And I said, "It was kind of father and son, yeah."
That's right.
So now it's, you know.
Well, and Jazz FM going to Soul Nation, having soul and funk now. What do you see the changes over there?
James, I think it's fantastic, all right? I was there yesterday for a staff meeting with Lori and Pat and Heather and Jesse and all the good people. And you know that hanging over the building it's all gone. You know, I always call it the stink. You know, things will happen. The same thing happened to Soul Pepper. They went through it, and I'm in a play with musical with Soul Pepper. That is not in the building no more. So the building has been refreshed. The enthusiasm, the joy, the energy. And in my conversations about coming over and doing a show I had with Pat Holliday, we went to sat at a Starbucks and just chatted one night. And I said to Pat, I said, "I think one thing that Jazz FM is forgetting is that we have 4 to 5 million, 6 million people that we have a reach to. Half the people work day jobs. They're in bed by 9 or stuff like that. Then there's the other half." I said, "Why is night just like an afterthought? Why can't nighttime be exciting? Because people go out at night and it's exciting." Yeah. I said, "So we want to be on a night, 3 or 4 hours. We want to do a night show and play what we want to play. If the jazz people want to argue with it, that's their problem. But they're sleeping, so I'm not worried about them." So the same thing, having Ron, Little John playing the soul and funk. Having you on now you can stretch.
Right. That extra hour for my show is
It's
the
a
same.
stretch,
I get to play really out there music that I want to play, and I know I can't be playing it at 6 at night, but I can play it at 11 at night.
You can.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting since we've done it and we built a Facebook page up and we did this, that we're not used to radio where people are constantly talking to you through the radio show. They're talking to us through Facebook, right?
Right.
Or they're sending us messages, and they're telling us what they like. And they'll tell us this. I'll walk out, even at Soul Pepper, I'll come out after a show, and I'll be standing and shaking hands, and people will walk up to me and go, so I was listening to you the other night, and that song, and I went, wow.
It's working.
That's how powerful that Jazz FM is, as people are dedicated.
Yeah, and there is conversation.
Yeah, but
constantly.
they listen to the music, and they listen to the shows, and the fact that you can be on at night talking to people, and it makes a difference when we're communicating with the city.
So you're producing records for other people. You've got a whole bunch of your own projects undergo. You've got 3 radio shows.
Yeah.
I'm getting tired thinking about your life.
Me too.
Are you going to write a book? Because during the Rob Ford days, you were writing some posts that were so funny. I kept writing to you saying, please write a book of fiction. You're like a polite Bukowski.
I have every one of those. There's 125.
Oh my.
Yeah, they're in a file.
I mean, that could be a book or just anything. Are you thinking about writing a book?
No, I have. You know what I did? I took off. I worked on it the year prior and last year. And I had to have an agent who was out trying to sell this book, this idea. But I wanted to go where I wanted to go with the book. He wanted to be a celebrity book. Well, Bill met Jimi Hendrix, right? Or, talk about that. I can't do that because, how much is there? We meet people all the time, but we're not really in their lives. And I'm not out on tour with every major band. So and I'm not going to write this behind the scene horrible stuff happen, right? Or this, I'm not I had the Greg Allman book, right? I started reading that, and it's nothing about junk and who you slept with. I don't care about books like this.
Yeah.
So I sit down and I started writing a book about family, our family. And this is what the book is. And it covers what it was like growing up as a little kid, growing up with a dad that suffered during World War II, his many operations, what the house was like, what the vibe was like, how it was like for kids to grow up in an environment.
That's why you can explain the smell of Wonder Bread and Sour Mash, because you're writing about it and you've given it a lot of thought. Yeah,
I remembered it. So I've written 250 pages of it, and that goes up to around 1971. And so it's just getting back to it and polishing and going through it.
Well, I promise I will buy your book.
There you go.
There's a sale already.
It's just that you get to the point when you get this age, you don't give a shit, right? Everybody goes, this is what you should do, this is what then you go, no, something tells me I should do it this way, and then I can hand it to if I only have one copy, I can hand to my son, and I go, there's your family history.
Absolutely.
There's what your dad did, this is what your mom did, this is what our relationship has been like. This is what it was like to be on the stage with Ronnie Hawkins when he was out of his mind. Yeah. This is what it was like to be with Craig Russell when you walked in the room and there was Tennessee Williams, and you run into him. These things, to me, are rich.
Right.
Right.
And easier for you to write because you have passion behind it.
Or you love the moment in the whole time. Or I think one of the special things about the book is those 2.5 years in Greenwich Village, because it's a kid that ends up homeless on the street and lives in it, finally gets out of the living off the street for the week and gets himself into a gig, and then gets a flat with another guy, and then goes to the Fillmore, then goes here, goes there. You know what I mean?
Right. Those really tender beginnings, very tricky.
Chasing a girl around the village who's just kicking his teeth in, that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, congratulations on a crazy career. I'll see you at the Beaches Jazz Festival, and I'm waiting for your book.
Oh, thanks, James. And man, you've done a great job at Jazz FM. It's so good to have you back.
Cool.
Always
Cheers.
Good. Yeah, man.
Yeah, water, the good stuff. Thank you, Bill King. What a guy. What a guy. We're going to come back next week. You never know who my guest will be. To be honest, I don't even know who my guest will be. But next week, join me next Friday for another. And please share this with Wild Joyous Abandon on social media. Let's get lots of people to find out more about the Toronto jazz scene and all the cool people that live here in the city of Toronto. See ya.